I always avoided going to Walmart late at night. The place felt different when the crowds disappeared and the eerie silence filled the aisles. One night, around 1 a.m., I had no choice but to make a visit. The parking lot in front of the store was empty, with only a few cars parked under the dim light of street lamps, making it look like a deserted wasteland. As I approached the entrance, I noticed a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were dirty and disheveled, and his eyes were red and wild. He slowly approached me, and his gaze was so intense that a shiver ran down my spine. I tried to quicken my pace, but he grabbed my arm and whispered, "They're watching us." His look was full of fear, and his breath smelled unbearably of alcohol and decay. My fear intensified as he started talking about entities hiding in the shadows watching us. I managed to break free, but when I returned to my car, I saw him standing next to it, not moving. I started the engine, and glancing in the rearview mirror, saw his figure fading into the night, but his wild eyes continued to haunt my thoughts. At home, I tried to calm down, but every time I went to the parking lot, fear made me glance over my shoulder and check for anyone lurking in the dark corners. Story 2. I always felt a sense of unease when visiting Walmart late at night, but tonight, for some reason, it was particularly unsettling. The store was empty, and only the dim light from the fluorescent bulbs illuminated the wide aisles. I tried to focus on my shopping, but the tension in the air was almost palpable. As I was picking out items, I noticed a man following me. At first, it was barely noticeable. His movements were cautious and discreet, but with each aisle, he seemed to be getting closer. His clothes were old and dirty, and his face was hidden under a hat. I didn't know who he was, but his presence made me uneasy. When I reached the checkout, his figure disappeared. I was relieved until I saw him again in the parking lot, standing by my car. His face, now clearly illuminated by the streetlight, was contorted into a menacing grimace. He was holding something in his hands, indistinguishable in the dim light, and his gaze was filled with a mix of hatred and anxiety. It looked as if he was ready to pounce if I didn't do what he wanted. I felt a surge of panic but tried to stay calm. I approached my car slowly, hoping he wouldn't come closer. His stare was intense, and as I opened the car door, he stepped toward me and whispered, "I'm looking for you." His voice was filled with desperation and threat, as if he was obsessed with an idea or haunted by something unseen. When I started the engine, he rushed to the window, and I saw his face twisted in an aggressive snarl. He began banging on the glass, his hands covered in dirt and scratches. His eyes were a mix of fear and rage. Not knowing what to do, I quickly started the car. His shouts and pounding on the window continued as I drove away. I didn't stop until I was far from the store. My hands were shaking with fear, and I checked the rearview mirror several times, expecting to see him again. Each turn I took, I searched for his figure, but everything was calm. The calmness, however, was deceptive. When I got home, I was exhausted and distressed. I checked all the locks on the doors and windows and tried to calm myself, hoping to forget the incident. But every night after that, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I frequently woke up feeling that someone in the dark was keeping an eye on me, and every creak in the house seemed like a sign of danger. Weeks went by, and the fear didn't subside. I started avoiding late-night outings and checked the backseat of my car before getting in. Everywhere I went, I tried to be alert to small details to avoid another encounter with that man. I felt as though he was still out there, lurking in the shadows, ready to appear again. Eventually, I decided to change my habits, move to a different area, and stopped going to Walmart late at night. But even in the new place, I couldn't forget his face, his hatred and fear. My life never returned to the previous state of calm. Every time I heard strange noises at night, old fear gripped me, and I was haunted by the thought that the man might be searching for me again, lurking somewhere in the darkness, ready to show up once more. Every night when I went to Walmart, I noticed an old car parked in the farthest corner of the lot. It looked like a long-forgotten vehicle, and every time I walked past it, I felt as if someone was watching me. One night, I saw that someone was inside the car, but the window was dirty and I couldn't make out their face. When I went into the store and finished my shopping, I saw the same car in its spot again, but now it looked different. The windows were clean, and the interior was empty. I felt uneasy but didn't think much of it. However, when I got into my car and looked in the rearview mirror, I saw a reflection of someone in the backseat, their eyes glowing in the darkness. My fear escalated as I saw the figure moving, trying to get out of the car. I left the parking lot as quickly as I could, but the feeling that someone was behind me lingered. Every time I stopped, I checked the back seat. And every night after that, I felt as if someone was watching me, which left me in constant unrest. In the later years of my teenage life, I moved out of my parents' house and started living in a dorm at the college I had always dreamed of attending. The campus was enormous, more like a small city. A few weeks before classes began, I had registered for my required courses. The problem was that I needed to take out student loans to pay for them, which meant I needed a job to pay them back. Most campus jobs were already filled, and the open positions conflicted with my class schedule, so I decided to look for work outside of school. I applied to grocery stores, gas stations, malls, and even Starbucks, but none of them worked out. Then I remembered seeing a help wanted sign at the Walmart not far from campus. I applied there and actually got the job. The manager was very polite, and my new co-workers were too, which was a huge bonus in a city known for its rude people. I ended up as a bagger, earning minimum wage at around $8 an hour. It wasn't much, but I worked full-time, and the money added up over time. One night, my manager called and asked if I could cover a shift for someone who had called in sick earlier that day. Unfortunately, it was my day off, but I didn't want to refuse the extra pay, so I agreed. My task was to find misplaced items around the store and put them back in their original spots. A few hours later, the store was nearly empty as closing time approached, and I was still searching for lost items. I crossed one of the aisles and saw a man in a long raincoat standing there, looking at one of the shelves. From my angle, he seemed to be searching for something. I approached him and offered to help, to which he immediately turned his head to face me. In a deep, nervous tone, he said, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to find the fishing gear." I told him it was in aisle 6 and pointed him in the right direction. However, he then placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Can I get your number? You look really pretty." I laughed awkwardly and said that I had a boyfriend, but thanked him for the compliment. His expression shifted from a smile to a frown, and I could tell he was displeased. He looked at me as if a child who had been denied candy. I walked away casually, trying to finish before closing time. As time passed, I realized he was nowhere in sight. I sighed with relief, grateful that he was gone. It wasn't just that he was creepy, he gave off such an unsettling, negative vibe. Closing time finally came, and as I was closing up the store, I felt the urge to use the bathroom. I put the keys in my pocket and went to the restroom. As soon as I entered, I felt that something was terribly wrong. You know that feeling when you think someone is watching you? I had it in spades. At one point, I looked at the stall door and saw an eye peeking through the crack. I then saw the man from earlier starting to crawl in from under the stall. I screamed at the top of my lungs. He eventually got inside, holding me down so I couldn't fight back. He pulled something from his back pocket, and I began to panic and cry. But then I saw my chance. I kicked him in the chest with my shoe, causing him to fall to the ground. Before he could get back up, I grabbed my keychain and hit him with it, making him scream in pain. I seized the opportunity to run out of there and immediately called the police, who arrived within minutes.